from the Acts of the Apostles. When Peter entered, Cornelius met him, and falling at his feet, paid him homage. Peter, however, raised him up, saying, "Get up, I myself am also a Jew." Then Peter proceeded to speak and said, "In truth, I see that God shows no partiality. Rather, in every nation, whoever fears him and acts uprightly is acceptable to him." While Peter was speaking these things, the Holy Spirit fell upon all who were listening to the word. The circumcised believers who had accompanied Peter were astounded that the gift of the Holy Spirit should have been poured out on the Gentiles also, for they could hear them speaking in tongues and glorifying God. Then Peter responded, "Can anyone withhold the water for baptism who have received the Holy Spirit even as we have?" He ordered them to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ.
The responsorial song is number 793 in the hymnal, All the Ends of the Earth, number 793.
Oh of God. Everyone who loves is begotten by God and knows God. Whoever is without love does not know God, for God is love. In this way, the love of God was made to us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might have life through him. And this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that he loved us, and sent his Son as an expiation for our sins. The word of the Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "As the Father loves me, so I also love you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I kept my Father's commandments and remained in his love. I have told you this, that my joy may be in you, and your joy might be complete. This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lie down one's life for one's friend. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because slaves do not know what the master is doing. I have called you friends, because I have told you everything that I have heard from my Father. It was not you who chose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. This I command you, love one another." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise.
This morning's Gospel, to remain, concludes our blessed Lord's teaching on the vine and the branches, rooted in the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 5 to be exact, in a story about a vineyard that started out all well and good, but quickly turned bad. My friend had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He spaded it, cleared it of stones, and planted the choicest vines. Within it, he built a watchtower, he hewed out a wine press, and then he looked for the crop of grapes. But what it yielded was wild grapes. Now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I did not do? Why, when I looked for the crop of grapes, did it bring forth wild grapes? Well, now I will let you know what I mean to do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge. I will break through its walls. I will let it be trampled. Yes, I will make it a ruin. Isaiah probably told the story in the context of the Feast of Tabernacles, commemorating Israel's journey through the desert, in the context of the cheerful atmosphere characteristic of this 8-day feast. Imagine many different sorts of performances going on at this feast, and then the prophet Isaiah himself mingling with the celebrating people and announcing a love story about his friend and his vineyard. But then it suddenly became very clear that to Isaiah's listeners, that the vineyard was Israel. The story was about the very people who were present at the feast. God gave them the way of justice in the Torah. He loved them. He did everything for them. And they answered him with unjust action and a regime of injustice. What seemed like a love story was actually a story of judgment. It ended on a gloomy note, that of Israel's abandonment of God with no sign at this stage in Israel's history of any further promise. Well, despite everything that happened to Israel since that Feast of Tabernacles, when Isaiah told the story in the midst of the people, Israel found herself again in essentially the very same situation at the time when our blessed Lord lived, who spoke to the heart of his people using the imagery of a vineyard. Recall the parable of the wicked tenants, where Jesus used a vine as the image of Israel, but rather the image of wicked tenants of a vineyard whose owner had gone on a journey. And the history of God's constant struggle for and with Israel was depicted in a series of servants who came at the owner's order to collect the grapes. And the history of the prophets, their suffering and death, appear throughout the parable, where the servants were manhandled and killed, and eventually the landowner sent his son, whom the tenants also seized and killed. And once again, history suddenly entered into the present, as Isaiah's listeners realized he was talking about them in his story about a vineyard, so Jesus' listeners realized the parable was about them and him in the parable of the tenants who worked in a vineyard. Jesus said in so many words, I'm talking about you, and I'm talking about me. Yet if we open our eyes, isn't what is said in the parable actually a description of our present world, 2018? This is precisely the logic of today, that there is absolutely no need for God. I read that 46% of respondents to a survey said that they never wonder whether or not they're going to go to heaven. 46% of those who participated in the survey never wonder whether or not they're going to get to heaven. That's all I think about, is whether or not I'm going to get to heaven. So the no group is not atheists who believe that there is no God. They're not agnostics who believe that you cannot prove or disprove there is God. But this new group is called apatheists, who believe there is a God, but who cares? This way, we no longer belong to God, and we can do as we please. We get rid of God, and there is no measuring rod above us. We are our own measure, and the vineyard is ours. Well, Jesus says, no. The vineyard, the vine, is not Israel. Jesus says, I am the true vine. And the words I am, that is God's name, and true, are the important things to notice about this saying, in that I am the true vine, and the vineyard belongs to me. What is also important is the theme of purification. Every branch that does not bear fruit will be pruned so that it bears more fruit. The vine is going to be cut back. The vine becomes smaller so that it can grow again. Each October, every parish conducts what is called the October count, which is basically taking a head count for 2 consecutive weeks of every single person at every single Mass. And in the Diocese of Trenton, 17 to 18% of registered parishioners attend Mass. 17 to 18%. A very concerning statistic, says Bishop O'Connell, to which I wholeheartedly agree. I'm very pleased to add that at St. Mary of the Lakes, 25% of registered parishioners attend Mass, and our attendance has increased every year for the last 3 years. So while the larger church, the diocesan church, may be trending down, St. Mary of the Lakes is trending up, and that's very good news. But our work in evangelization is far from over, because 25% of those attending Mass means 75% of parishioners are not attending Mass. So all of us need to do what we can so that attendance will continue to trend up. So applying today's gospel to this statistic, some might say that those who are lapsed Catholics are perhaps those who do not produce fruit. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Some who are lapsed might not produce fruit, but not all of them. Another survey, 292 lapsed Catholics responded, asking them why they lapsed. And the reasons varied from church teaching to the sex scandal to a bad experience with a priest or a member of the parish, poor liturgies, poor music, poor homilies. But whatever the reason, the church as a branch on the vine is being pruned. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave me? Well, it leaves me with a challenge to do my best to teach, so that the people understand what the church teaches and why, to offer a Mass with reverence, to do my best to write a good homily, and to do my best to lead this parish. Well, where does it leave you? It leaves you to remain, today's gospel, and to evangelize, a fancy word for talking up Jesus, a fancy word for talking up St. Mary of the Lakes, either over the back fence or on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and repost everything that we post to you. That's the new evangelization that we've been hearing about since the pontificate of Pope Benedict. If you read last Sunday's Gospel and today's Gospel, there is one word that repeats 11 times, and that word is remain. Last Sunday, remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own, so neither can you unless you remain in me. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. If you remain in me and my words remain in you. This Sunday, remain in my love. You will remain in my love, just as I kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. It was I who chose you and appointed you to go out and to bear fruit that will remain. Remain. The church is not perfect. The church is not perfect because I'm not perfect. The church is not perfect because you're not perfect. And those who left are not perfect. The church will never be perfect. The church was never perfect. Read a good back history book, and there be reminded that wave after wave of imperfection on the inside and out have rolled against the church. Christians being devoured by lions in Roman amphitheaters. Persecutions under the merciless, like Diocletian, who prided himself on the inscription, to Diocletian, who destroyed the very name Christian. Heresies who confused our teaching but later helped to define it. Barbarians who invaded, but eventually put down their spears and knelt to be baptized. The cruel excesses of the Spanish Inquisition, the Protestant Reformation, the French Revolution, the anti-popes, the oath against modernism, the sex scandal that rocked the American church. Yet each time, the waves of heresies, persecutions, wars, reformations, and scandals subsided, and those who remained, and there's the key, and those who remained got up and looked around, there was always the Catholic Church. Why? Because I am the true vine, and those who remain bear much fruit and become my disciples.